Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriritam Kalmashapaham Sravanamangalam Srimadatam Bhuvi Grananti Ye Bhurida Jana. The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, advice to the Brahmo devotees. Sri Ramakrishna's conversation continues. Sri Ramakrishna, ignorance lasts as long as one has ego. There can be no liberation so long as the ego remains. O God, Thou art the doer and not I. That is knowledge. So, this is the very basic idea of the Vedanta philosophy. That the ultimate conscious principle, because of ignorance, appears as the ego. That as in the Sankhya philosophy we find, that's the idea, that the Pancha Klesha, what are they? Avidya, Asmita, Raga, Dvesha, Abhinivesha. Avidya, the ignorance, that results in Asmita. The conscious principle, when gets reflected in the psychophysical existence, then it gets identified, the consciousness gets identified with the reflection and thinks it to be the reflection. And that delusion, this delusion that I am the reflection, the consciousness is getting reflected in the psychophysical existence and it identifies it with itself with that reflection. And that's what is the ego. Identification with the reflection of consciousness in the psychophysical existence. The moment I get identified with that, now I start thinking that I am this body-mind complex. And all other afflictions starts from that. The moment I get identified with the body-mind complex, being identified with the ego, then what happens? That now, as we always say, that the reflection of the consciousness is always asserting that I am eternal, I am ever fulfilled. Now, hearing the echo of the consciousness from the body-mind complex, the ego is nothing but that echo. It thinks that something from within is saying, I am eternal, I am ever fulfilled. And now out of this delusion, it tries to realize that eternity and the sense of fulfillment through the body-mind complex, which is never possible because the body-mind complex is a flow. It's constantly going through the transformation. But something within is saying, I am eternal, I am eternal. It's the echo which is saying. And now in our attempt to realize the eternity through the body-mind complex, what we are doing, from a microbe to the human being, all whatever we are doing, that whatever we find is favorable for the existence of the body-mind complex, we get drawn towards it. Raga. And anything which is not favorable for its existence, we develop fight and flight response. If we have strength, we fight. If we don't have strength, we run away from it. So that is called Dvesha and Abhinivesha. So all these afflictions which motivates all our action. If we try to find out what motivates our action, these are the three things. Raga, Dvesha, Abhinivesha. Attachments to the thing which is favorable for my psychophysical existence. Aversion for the things which are not favorable for my psychophysical existence. This all develops from the ego. So ego is the cause of our bondage. The moment I realize that I am the conscious principle, then there is no question of getting identified with the reflection. That's where the spiritual journey starts. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna is saying that ignorance lasts as long as one has ego. That in some other context, which we say again and again, that when someone asks Sri Ramakrishna, "Sir, when shall I be free?" His answer was, "When I cease to be." That the I is the cause of our bondage. The moment that is relinquished, then I get identified with the non-dual consciousness, which is the ultimate cause behind the entire existence, the substratum behind the entire existence. And there is no more question of rebirth. This constant, this reincarnation happens because of our ceaseless endeavor to realize eternity and fulfillment in this body, in this psychophysical existence. That results in all the reincarnation. The moment I realize I am the self, that stops. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna is saying that ego is the cause of the bondage, that as long as there is ego, there is no question of liberation. So the idea that we have to have is that everything the Lord is doing through the body-mind complex, I am not the doer, it is the Lord who is the doer. I am just the instrument, the nimitta matra, through which the Lord is working. So that's what he's saying, that so long as the ego remains, there is no liberation. O God, thou art the doer and not I, that is knowledge. Now, here we find that this knowledge speaks of the belief in God, devotion to God. It is a God who is working through me. So now ego can be got rid of in two ways. We will find that in Jnana Yoga, there is an assertion that I am one with the ultimate reality. And in Bhakti Yoga, what we say? The Lord is everything, I am insignificant. He is working through me. Nahang nahang tuhu tuhu. Not me, thou art is the essence of behind the existence. So it's both actually are same. In both we are annihilating the so-called limited ego. In Jnana Yoga, we are annihilating the limited sense of ego by identifying ourselves with the absolute consciousness. And in Bhakti, we are negating ego by thinking oneself as not the doer. He is just the instrument in the hand of God. It is a God who is working through him. If I am not the doer, the question of ego doesn't arise. So we will find that there is a very nice, funny example which Girish Ghosh used to give. That this two way of annihilating ego, one through jnana and another through bhakti. So in the life of Swami Vivekananda, we find in his lectures that he is again and again asserting that he is the conscious principle, that we are the conscious principle, we are not the body, not the mind, not the senses. That jnana is very much predominant. We find in his lectures, as Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Noren hocche khap khola talwar, that he is a sword which is never inside the scabbard. It is always as if uplifted. What it means? That always he is expressing that idea that he is the self. There is no sense of fear. That his assertion is so strong that he is no more identified with the limited self. He is always identifying with the non-dual consciousness. So that's the jnana. He has actually made himself so big that the ego has no place in his existence. And another wonderful devotee of Ramakrishna was Naga Mahashaya. And he was an extremely humble person. He was full of devotion that the Lord in the form of Ramakrishna is everything, he is nothing. This nahang nahang tuhu tuhu that Sri Ramakrishna is to repeat again and again. Naga Mahashaya was a manifestation of the Sri Ramakrishna's word. Nahang nahang tuhu tuhu. Now Girish Ghosh is to say that how to get rid of ego? There are two ways. Either assert yourself with the absolute consciousness as Naren used to do, or make yourself just as if nothing, just as Nag Mahasaya used to do. And he used to, in a very funny way, he used to say a wonderful thing. He used to say that the Mahamaya, the ignorance, couldn't bind either Naren or Nag Mahasaya. And then what he's saying is something really very funny. He's saying that when the Mahamaya was trying to ensnare, was trying to bind Naren with the net of his ignorance, Mahamaya's ignorance, Naren became so big that the net proved to be small. The net was very small compared to Naren. He became so big. His assertion that he is the self, he became so big. And Nag Mahasaya became so small that again Mahamaya couldn't bind him with his net. He became so small that he passed through the whole of the nets because he became so small. So that's how he also couldn't be bound by the net of Mahamaya. So that's the idea. Through jnana, that a jnana yogi asserts himself that he is one with the absolute. He becomes as if bigger than the net of Maya. And a bhakta, he becomes so small that his existence is totally annihilated, as if the Lord is everything. So by becoming small, he also is not bound by the ensnare, by the net of Maya, because he passes through it. He has become so small. The net of Maya cannot hold him. So that's how Girish, in his poetical way, used to explain the difference between the jnana and the bhakti way. Though the practice is different, but both enables us to meet the same goal. The goal is the annihilation of ego. In whatever way we can ensure that our ego is annihilated, that itself is the be-all and end all of our spiritual journey. The moment the ego is annihilated, we are free. We are no more bound in this physical existence. We become liberated. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. Now, what are the qualities that we need to develop for our spiritual evolution? One by one, Sri Ramakrishna will be enumerating these various qualities which we should develop to evolve spiritually. So to the Brahma devotees, he is enumerating those qualities one by one. First is humility. So what he's saying, by being lowly, one can rise high. The chatak bird makes its nest on low ground, but it soars very high in the sky. So that's the mythological bird, chatak. What's the characteristic of that bird? Its nest is in the ground, but it soars high up in the sky to quench its thirst. It never takes the water from any reservoir. How it quenches its thirst? It will be flying high up in the sky, and when a particular constellation is on the ascendant, the Swati Nakshatra, and then when it rains, that's the water, that rainwater which this bird will be drinking to quench its thirst. So it always soars very high in the sky. So just like other birds, it doesn't come down to drink the water from the reservoir to quench its thirst. It's soaring high up in the sky. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna's example giving. The chatak bird makes its nest on the low ground, but it soars very high in the sky. Cultivation is not possible on high land. In low land, water accumulates and makes cultivation possible. So that's the idea of humility is trying to bring forth through these examples. That just like in a low land where the water accumulates, then only agriculture is possible. Similarly, if we can develop humility, if we can cultivate humility in our life, then this our what you say, this, that we become the breeding ground. Our psyche becomes the breeding ground for other spiritual qualities to bloom. We can just enable the other spiritual qualities to bloom in this breeding ground of the mind which has developed humility. So what other qualities one has to develop to evolve spiritually? The next thing he speaks of the company of holy men. One must take the trouble to seek the company of holy persons. In his own home, a man hears only worldly talk. The disease of worldliness has become chronic with him. So that's the thing, that wherever that our mind, as Sri Ramakrishna in some other context will say, is just like a cloth. In whatever color you dye, it takes that color of the dye. It gets tainted with that color. This cloth gets hued by that color. So the mind is something like that. If we always keep it in our worldly environment, it is bound to become worldly. So now and then we have to come out from our worldly so-called environment and try to be in the holy company, so that that company starts soaking in our psyche, and our psyche gets tainted, gets hued by all those good qualities which we see there. So even in modern science they say that we learn more through observation than through instruction. A small child has the mirror neurons, they call mirror neurons. So what you instruct, that doesn't make much impression in his mind. But what he sees unknowingly, even without the knowledge of the child, he starts mirroring those characters with the help of this mirror neuron, and that starts becoming a part of his character. So this observation is very important. To soak oneself in a particular environment is very important. It is the environment which molds us, and that's why this holy company is necessary. The company of holy men. What's the next quality speaking of? The reputation of name. But that should lead to realization. So one should have earnestness. He's saying that mere repetition of name or japa won't help unless it leads to realization. That we should always have that motivation. That in spiritual practice we find that sometimes all the spiritual practices become a drudgery. Just like other habit, it also becomes a habit. We sometimes forget why we are doing it. So to keep in mind that this spiritual practice should entail me to attain realization in this very life. We'll find in some other context, Sri Ramakrishna one day heard a devotee singing a song. What's the song? Hari prem se lage raho re bhai, tera banat banat bani jai. So what's the idea? That go on taking the name of the Lord, try to have devotion for Lord Hari. If not today, someday you will be transformed, you will attain illumination. Hearing that, Sri Ramakrishna got terribly angry. What do you mean by if not now, sometimes? It should happen now itself. You should have that type of determination. So that's the thing which Sri Ramakrishna is indicating, that not just mere repetition of the name or japa, but we should have that urge for realization. So what he's saying, mere possession of money doesn't make a nobleman. One sign of the mansion of a nobleman is that all the rooms are lighted. The poor cannot afford much oil and consequently cannot have so many lights. This shrine of the body should not be left dark. One should illumine it with the lamp of wisdom, lighting the lamp of knowledge in the chamber of your heart. Behold the face of the mother, the Brahman's embodiment. So what he is actually saying, that just like the mere possession of money doesn't make one a nobleman, that money should be used in such a way that it shows your the wealth, the it shows your affluence. How? That your house at the night is light, in the evening is lighted. That speaks of spending the money which you have. That you have used your money to light your house. Similarly, this japa is like the money. Your all spiritual practices is like the wealth. But unless it leads to the enlightenment, the lighting of your heart means that enlightenment. Unless you get enlightened by the spiritual wisdom, what's the use of that money? So that alone doesn't make you a nobleman. The nobleman should show that affluence through his way of life. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. So that showing the affluence through your life speaks of that realization. When you're realized, then only all these practices have worth. Otherwise, they have no meaning. So that tremendous urge should be there. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna's next thing is saying, that's why along with the repetition, you should constantly pray earnestly. That it is not that knowledge, that ultimate spiritual goal is meant for only a few. Everyone, it is the birthright of each and every human being. As a human being, we do have the capacity to realize God in this very life. That Sri Ramakrishna is asserting again and again in the gospel. And for that, we have to pray earnestly along with our this japa. What he's saying, everyone can attain knowledge. There are two entities, Jivatma, the individual soul, and Paramatma, the supreme soul. Through prayer, all individual souls can be united to the supreme soul. Every house, so Sri Ramakrishna for everything gives an example, very nice example. Every house has a connection for gas, and gas can be obtained from the main storage tank of the gas company. Apply to the company and it will arrange for your supply of gas. Then your house will be lighted. So that's just the way you pray to the gas company. He comes and connects the already existing gas line to your house so that you immediately get the supply of gas, inexhaustible supply of gas. However, as much as you want, you get it. So similarly, that the spiritual, that we in our essence are spiritual. Somehow the ignorance has blocked the expression of the spirituality in your life. It's just the way the gas lines are connected, but there is a blockage which has to be removed by the gas company. For that I pray. So here also I have to pray earnestly for the removal of that ignorance, so that the spiritual essence which defines my existence, that becomes the part and parcel of my day-to-day life. It finds expression through my every activity, through my every thought, through my every deed. The spirituality finds expression, and for that I have to pray to the Lord so that the Paramatman gets united with the Jivatman, and at last it realizes that Jivatman was not there at all. It is the Paramatman who was appearing as the Jivatman. As in the Mundaka Upanishad, that wonderful allegory is there of the two birds. The two birds, one bird is sitting on the topmost branch of a tree. It is calm, not eating any fruits, and another bird is sitting on the lower branches of the tree and is constantly busy in eating the fruits of the tree. It eats the sweet fruits and then sometimes bitter fruits. By eating the bitter fruits, it gets disgusted and it looks up and sees the serene bird sitting there. Seeing the serene bird sitting there without eating any sweet fruits or the bitter fruits, just detached, he's sitting there. Seeing him, this lower bird gets attracted. It stops for the time being eating sweet and bitter fruits, and it starts moving up. From one bench to the other, it starts moving up. After moving a little, it forgets. Again it gets involved in eating the sweet and the bitter fruits. Again it eats the bitter fruit. And then again it suffers. And then again it looks up. Again it gets drawn. That's how, by leaps and bounds gradually. It starts moving up towards that calm bird sitting on the topmost branch of the tree. And as it comes near to its vicinity, it finds that as if its wings are merging with the wings of that upper bird. And gradually, as it moves nearer and nearer, it finds that, what to speak of the wings, his entire body is gradually merging with that bird. And then at last, the bird realizes that it was never the separate bird at all. It was one with that bird sitting on the topmost branch without eating any fruits. It was just sitting there in its own splendor. Tranquil, and with full tranquility it was sitting there. It was always one with him. It was just a mere reflection of that which was appearing as the lower bird. The moment it stops eating this bird, these bitter and sweet fruits, and starts moving towards it, getting drawn towards it, the more and more it gets identified with it. And that's the idea of the removal of the blockage, and so that the Paramatman finds expression through the Jivatman. So for that Sri Ramakrishna is saying that earnestly pray, not just get hooked with just the drudgery of our spiritual practice. Have that earnestness, and with earnestness pray for that realization. And then he's saying that one should want nothing but God. That even in Bible it is mentioned that God is the most jealous God. Why he is jealous? We will find that what's the jealousy, what it speaks of, that when someone loves a person and finds that his beloved actually also loves someone else, that his love is being shared, he becomes jealous, or she becomes jealous, that the entire love should be given to him or her, that it cannot be shared. So in that sense, God is also jealous. When you say, I love God, God is extremely jealous. He sees whether I love anything else or not. If I have love for other things, God never responds to that love. He responds only when our love is totally focused to the Lord and Lord alone. We forget everything and become one-pointed. As in the Upanishad it is being mentioned that Anya Vacha Vimunchatha. Just by relinquishing every other talk, I fully focus on the thought and the contemplation of the divine and divine alone. That alone can lead me to the spiritual illumination. So Sri Ramakrishna is explaining that in his own words. In some people, spiritual consciousness has already been awakened, but they have special marks. They do not enjoy hearing or talking about anything but God. They are like the chatak, which prays for rainwater, though the 7 oceans, the Ganges, the Jamuna, and the rivers near it are all filled with water. It won't drink anything but rainwater, even though its throat is burning with thirst. So that's what the example with which we started our discussion today. The chatak bird. It is focused. It is not going to drink any water, just the rainwater. So that way, the one who has that one-pointed devotion, single-pointed devotion, without any distraction, for him only spiritual illumination is possible. And then, again Sri Ramakrishna is saying that it is a zeal for the attainment of the Lord that destroys all our sin and makes us as if one with him. In our scriptures they say, Tadakara karita, Tat akara akarita. My akara, my existence, akarita, becomes one with the Lord's existence. When you go on constantly contemplating on the divine, you gradually start imbibing all the qualities, all those divine qualities, and you as if become a replica of the divine. So that as even in the Bible they say that God made man in his own image. That's the idea, that in human alone we can see the reflection of God, see the replica of God. if we can get rid of all the impurities of the dross, we become as if just one with God. There's no difference between God and me, because when the impurities are removed, I become one with the divine. It is the impurities that keeps me separated. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna is saying the tremendous zeal that in this very life I have to realize the divine. The tremendous urge should be there. And when in the Yoga Sutra we find that how much importance is given to that zeal, the tremendous urge to realize the ultimate goal. On that depends the speed of spiritual evolution. So what Sri Ramakrishna is saying, as the tiger devours other animals, so does the tiger of zeal for the Lord eat up lust, anger and other passions. Once this zeal grows in the heart, lust and other passions disappear. The gopis of Vrindavan had that state of mind because of their zeal for Krishna. Again, this zeal for God is compared to collyrium. So first he's saying that the zeal helps us to get rid of all the dross. Because if your mind is totally focused on God, the other things are bound to fall off. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that in some other context, that the more you go towards the east, the west automatically falls behind. That's the idea behind the words which he's saying here. The tiger devours other animals. As the tiger devours all other animals, so the tiger of zeal, the zeal is like a tiger. What it does, the zeal for the Lord eats up lust, anger and other passions. That your earnestness to realize God is so intense, so strong, that there is no place for other desire, other passions. They fall off naturally. That's one. Another thing, you become more and more like the divine. All the divine qualities start getting manifested through our life. So that's the thing Sri Ramakrishna is saying. Next, the gopis of Vrindavan had that state of mind because of their zeal for Krishna. Again, the zeal for God is compared to collyrium. Radha said to her friends, I see Krishna everywhere. They replied, friend, you have painted your eyes with the collyrium of love. That is why you see Krishna everywhere. They say that when your eyes are painted with collyrium made from the ashes of a frog's head, you see snakes everywhere. So that's a myth. But what that myth indicates, it may not be true. It's a myth that if you paint your eyes, that if a frog is cremated and from the ash of that cremated frog, if you paint your eyes, you will be seeing snake everywhere. What's the idea? That the frog is always scared of the snake. It as if sees snake everywhere. It is always so cautious. So when you apply the collyrium of this frog's ash in your eyes, so that's the characteristic of the frog you imbibe. Like the frog, you also as if see the snake everywhere. You're so scared of it that as if you see everywhere. So you become as if one with the characteristic of that frog. The scares, the tremendous fear for the snake. So that's the idea. So Radha said to her friends, I see Krishna everywhere. So when you become intently devoted to the God, that's what happened. Your total perceptions change, vision change. When through our spiritual practice, when we at last realize the divine, and from there when we come down, we find it is a God who has become everything. That as in the Chaitanya Charitamrita they say, that's the idea spoken of here. Jatra jatra netra pore, tatra tatra Krishna sphura. That wherever my eye falls, I see Krishna popping up there. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say very nicely, that how I look at the universe, it's everything appears to be consciousness. Just as in the rainy season, you walk on the grass field, you will find the grass is drenched with water. Similarly, I see the entire creation drenched in consciousness. So this is the idea that when you have a tremendous zeal for attaining the spiritual ideal, you become as if one with the divine. you see the divine everywhere. So that you become tadakara karita, and all your so-called negativities, they fall off. All the sins fall off. All the passions fall off. So that's the thing which Sri Ramakrishna is indicating. So all these characteristics, the 6 characteristics, he says, once you develop in your life, know it for certain that you are going to attain the spiritual goal in no time, in a very short time. So, in short, what are these 6 qualities again? This humility, company of holy man second. The third is that japa with earnestness. Fourth is prayer, and fifth is that prayer and the japa should be one-pointed, forgetting everything, giving entire our mind to the God and God alone. And the sixth is the tremendous zeal we should have to have that one-pointed devotion. So you'll find that each quality, the succeeding quality is the cause of the preceding quality. That unless you have zeal, you can never be one-pointed. Unless you have one-pointed, your prayer and your japa cannot be effective. And unless your prayer and japa, this prayer and japa can be effective only when you have you have kept yourself in the holy company, you have associated with the holy person, then only it happens. And to associate yourself with the holy person, that the first quality you should have is humility. That without humility, you never feel like associating with the holy person. That as most of us feel, that reading a few books, I know everything. What's the use of holy person? So that's a type of pride which never allows us to expose myself to to the environment where all the holy persons is leading a holy life, and that the holiness is as if is pulsating in that atmosphere. So I never feel like soaking myself in that. So you will find that all the preceding qualities actually entails from the succeeding qualities. And that's what Ramakrishna describes as the way for attaining the qualities for spiritual evolution, all these qualities. So after saying that, now Sri Ramakrishna will speak of the traits of the bound soul. That a bound soul, what are its traits? The masters now, he will be describing that. What he's saying, they are indeed bound souls who constantly dwell with woman and gold and do not think of God even for a moment. How can you expect noble deeds from them? Of them? They are like mangoes picked by a crow, which may not be offered to the deity in the temple, and which even men hesitate to eat. So this is the first thing he's saying, that they dwell constantly in woman and gold, this lust and gold. That what it speaks of, that because of our ignorance, the moment we get bound, what are the obsessions we develop? This lust and gold. That because they are necessities. That without lust, there cannot be propagation of life. Without gold, there cannot be the sustenance of life. And this life, the propagation of life, is based on the ignorance that I am eternal. I have to realize that eternity through this body-mind complex. So that you will find from that ignorance, the moment we have the body, these two necessities develop. And when we go on pursuing these two necessities, they become something like a deep groove in our mind. And we become obsessed by them. We cannot come out of them. We get cocooned by them. And that's what is the characteristic of a bound soul. That's what the Master is saying. They are indeed bound souls who constantly dwell with woman and gold and do not think of God even for a moment. How can you expect noble deeds of them? They are like mangoes picked by a crow. Just as we know that if you have to offer a fruit to the God, if it is picked by a bird, we can never offer. So what it says, that we are like that fruits, but being entangled in the worldly passions, we have got picked by those worldly passions. So how can now you offer the fruit, that I am a fruit which has been picked by the worldly passions? How can it be offered to the divine? So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying, that they are like the mangoes picked by a crow, which may not be offered, which may not be offered to the deity in the temple, and which even men hesitate to eat. Bound souls, worldly people are like silkworms. The worms can cut through their cocoons if they want, but having woven the cocoon themselves, they are too much attached to them and to leave them, and so they die there. So that's the idea. So unless the silkworm cuts the cocoon and comes out of it and fly as a butterfly, then what will happen? If it cannot do that, it will die inside the cocoon. It has to come out, it has to exert to break the cocoon and come out and fly as a butterfly. Otherwise, it is going to die inside the cocoon. So sometimes the silkworm may think that this cocoon is its security zone. It's safe there. It becomes its comfort zone, its security zone. And it never tries to come out of it. And then what happens? That becomes the cause of his annihilation, destruction. So similarly, why he is saying that? The same way we feel. The so-called our worldly life is just like that cocoon. We feel that's our security zone. That's our comfort zone. To come out of it, we feel we are endangered that way. That our life will be full of perils, risks, dangers. How to come out of it? We think it to be our most secured place. As Swami Vivekananda gives another example, wonderful example, that if those who climb the mountains, the snow peaks, if by chance they fall on a snow, they fall on a glacier or an avalanche, they fall. Initially, they'll really like that sensation. The body becomes very almost immobile, and it gives a wonderful sense of relaxation. That person starts feeling that let me have a nice sleep. A sleep which I never had. So relaxing it is going to be. I'm already feeling that relaxation. The others, they will cry. If someone else is with him, they will try to come and pull him out from that situation. He will say, no, I'm quite happy. But they know if he continues in that state for a few more moments, he's going to die. He has to be forcefully brought out from that situation. So our condition is like that. That all the worldly passions in which we are, we think that to be our most pleasurable place, our comfort zone, our security zone, forgetting that it is going to annihilate us, kill us. In spiritual sense, we are going to be killed. The scope for spiritual evolution is totally closed for that. There is no chance for any spiritual evolution anymore. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna is giving that example, that for the worldly people, his condition is like that silkworm, which thinks the cocoon is the most safest place for it, and it just dies there. So die there. Free souls are not under the control of woman and gold. They are like silkworms that cut through the cocoon. They may have made with such great care, but they are few and far between. It is Maya that deludes. Only a few become spiritually awakened and are not deluded by the spell of Maya. They do not come under the control of human and gold. Two classes of perfect souls. So now Sri Ramakrishna is speaking of that after saying that they come out of this cocoon, they are the liberated soul. Now he is speaking of two types of these liberated souls, perfect souls. What are they? There are two classes of perfect souls. Those who attain perfection through spiritual practice and those who attain it through the grace of God. Some farmers irrigate their field with great labor. Only then can they grow crops. But there are some who do not have to irrigate at all. Their fields are flooded by rain. They don't have to go to the trouble of drawing water. One must practice spiritual discipline laboriously in order to avoid the clutches of Maya. Those who attain liberation through the grace of God do not have to labor, but they are few indeed. The ever perfect. Then there is the class of the ever perfect. So this is another class he is speaking. They are born in each life with their spiritual consciousness already awakened. Think of the spring whose outlet is obstructed. While looking after various things in the garden, the plumber accidentally clears it and the water gushes out. Yet people are amazed to see the first manifestation of an ever perfect soul's zeal for God. They say, where was all this devotion and renunciation and love? So this three classes he is speaking of. That one has to have a lot of labor. So these are sadhan siddha. And then some are kripa siddha, that the grace dawns in their life. Even without much effort, they can attain illumination. And there are some who are ever perfect, who never comes under the snares of Maya. So they are the nitya siddhya. So sadhan siddhya, kripa siddhya, nitya siddhya. So this in Bhakti Yoga also they speak of these various categories of the perfect souls. So what's the idea? That again and again we say that we don't know that whether the grace is going to dawn in my life or not, without which spiritual relation is not possible. But we have to practice. We have to practice so that when the grace dawns, we are prepared. As Sri Ramakrishna in other contexts gives that example of these two farmers, Khandani Chasha and the one who is a traditional farmer is the Khandani Chasha. That we have to be like him. That we don't know when the grace is going to dawn in our life. But if a farmer doesn't plow his land and if suddenly the rain comes, is he going to get the benefit of the rain? No. The rain is uncertain, but he has to keep the ground ready. He has to plow the land. And when the rain comes, if he has plowed, then only he is going to get the benefit. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. The sadhan siddha is the one who through his spiritual practice keeps himself ready for the rain. And who is the kripa siddha? That suddenly, most probably, someone else has plowed his land. Like what is that he has been born in a family where all the conditions required for spiritual perfection is already there, and the grace also dawns in, and then he attains that liberation. But for all the things, we may think that there are some who have that special privilege, but it's not so. In the ever perfect, after speaking of that, some who are never comes in the domain of bondage, on the snares of Maya. What he's saying is something very interesting. That think of a spring whose outlet is obstructed. So while looking after various things in the garden, the plumber accidentally clears it and the water gushes out. So what it speaks? That that line of water was already there. And suddenly, accidentally, the circumstances enabled that a plumber accidentally strike the pipe and the water started coming in and people are amazed. Oh, from where so much of water is coming? So what's the idea? That it may appear that someone is kripa siddha, that suddenly the grace has dawned in his life. But actually it is not so. Most probably in the previous lives, he has done a lot of spiritual practice with which he has already developed some samskara. That is latent, these latent impressions are in his mind. But in this birth, because of the lack of proper circumstances, they are not manifesting. And then suddenly he gets that favorable circumstances suddenly. Because of the change of the circumstances, he gets the favorable circumstances. Maybe accidentally he is there. And now this favorable circumstances enables to remove that thin covering of ignorance and the already traits, spiritual traits which he has developed because of his past samskaras. They start manifesting. It's just like that water, it gushes, it comes out. Others are amazed, others thinks, oh, from where it came? We have never seen him practicing. But who knows that how much practice he have done in the previous birth. Sri Ramakrishna gives these so many examples that two persons were, one person was meditating. Under a tree he was sitting, he was doing Shab Sadhana. He procured all the things required for that Tantra Sadhana for attaining illumination. That you require a Shava, a dead body, and he was sitting on that and he was doing Ghor Tapas for days together, nights together. He never got up from his seat, he was meditating. And it was in the forest, and another person was sitting on the top of the tree and he was observing what's going on. And then suddenly it started raining. There was torrential rain, and this man was deep in his meditation, never even realized it's raining. And then from the deep forest a tiger came. And seeing this man meditating, it simply jumped on that person and dragged him inside the forest, killed him and devoured him. The man who was sitting on the top of the tree, he found all the things which has to be procured for the sadhana is ready. So he immediately came down and just sat on the seat. After doing some cleansing ceremony, he sat on the seat, doing the achamana, he sat there. And in very short moment, the Lord appeared in front of him. And this man was surprised. He told that, how come you be so partial? The other person was really doing a very intense, austere sadhana. And at last he was devoured by the tiger. He couldn't realize the truth. And I just sat for 5 minutes and you are in front of me. I cannot understand the way in which your grace dawns on man. And then God replies, well, you don't know. You have forgotten that how much tapas you have done in your previous births. That's why you got all the favorable circumstances in this birth without your effort. And the moment you getting the favorable circumstances, you try to practice a little. Your past samskaras, the force of the past good samskaras enable you to attain the realization in such a short time. So that's the idea. Sri Ramakrishna gives another funny example, that a man early in the morning just took 1 peg of alcohol and he became totally inebriated. He was faltering, his steps were faltering. And the people were surprised at how come such a person get so much intoxicated by just a small peg. And then they realized that person was drinking throughout the night. Just a little was required for him to lose his wits, to lose his balance. He became so intoxicated. So just he was drinking throughout the night. So that's the idea. That the pipe was already there. It needed just a little favorable circumstances, that like the gardener hitting accidentally that pipe, and all those good qualities which he has already developed, that like a fountain comes through, finds expression through his life. That's what Sri Ramakrishna is indicating. So though he categorizes into this Kripa Siddha and Sadhan Siddha, but actually he indicates the Kripa is something which appears as Kripa, but we don't know that how much practices he has gone through in his previous birth that has made it possible for him to attain, to get all the favorable circumstances in this life and attain illumination almost instantly. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is indicating. Then what he's saying, the conversation turned to the spiritual zeal of devotees as illustrated in the earnestness of the gopis of Vrindavan. And then Ramlal, his nephew, sang one song on those lines, on that theme of earnestness. Thou art my all in all, O Lord, the life of my life, the essence of essence. In the three worlds I have none else but thee to call my own. So whatever Sri Ramakrishna was discussing, his nephew found the gist of it in his song, and that's the song he started singing. Thou art my peace, my joy, my hope, thou my support, my wealth, my glory, thou my wisdom and my strength. Thou art my home, my place of rest, my dearest friend, O next of kin, my present and my future, thou my heaven and my salvation. Thou art my scriptures, my commandments, thou art my ever gracious Guru, thou the spring of my boundless bliss, thou art the way and thou the goal, thou the adorable one, O Lord, thou art the mother tender-hearted, thou the chastising father, thou the creator and protector, thou the helpsman who dost steer my craft across the sea of life. Master to the devotees. Ah, what a beautiful song. Thou art my all in all. So that's the theme of the song, which Master really liked and he was enchanted. So that's what he is saying to the devotees. So with these words of the Master, we stop our discussion today. We'll continue the succeeding discussions again in the next class. Thank you all. Namaskar.